All right, folks, here come the stacks. Boom, 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 boom. One more stack. We got a couple more. We got one over here. We got a few over here. We got one right there. We got one right there. We got one right there. Wow. We got stacks, man. And I use dollar bills and sometimes $5 bills as paper, as bookmarks. So don't be surprised if I find money. Okay, first up is a rather charming volume from Every Man's Library, number 856. Of the shorter novels in the 18th century, Johnson, Walpole, and Beckford. The Johnson novella, it's a short novel, is the history of Rasselas, which is a moral tale. Pretty good stuff. He's the Prince of Abyssinia, and he learns a lot. Samuel Johnson. The Castle of Otranto, of course, is, as it says, a Gothic story. Pretty good. Horace Walpole, the great bon vivant, and became a nobleman and a very powerful political figure. And Vathek, an Arabian Tale, by William Beckford, translated from the original French by Reverend Samuel Henley. I didn't know that Beckford, a very wealthy man who was born into a very wealthy family, of course, and he died in Switzerland at 84. He had the good sense to leave England because, just like Gibbon, the writer of the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, 3-volume set. He left England too, but he had a bunch of humbugs and stuff. Castle of Otranto, again, is a Gothic story. A lot of intrigue, a lot of scary stuff. Very sharply drawn characters. Vathek, an Arabian Tale, is again on the same. It's a moral tale, but it's a little bit different than the history of Rasselas, which Samuel Johnson is very much likes to preach. And Beckford just lets the story tell itself. The history of Rasselas is still it's something entertaining to read, but it's not as good as Vathek, in my opinion. Good stuff, though. Nice little volume. Over about 300 pages. Nice stuff. Next up is a charming volume by Pietro Bembo, Cardinal Bembo, the great poet, historian, and he became a cardinal. He wrote a history of Venice. This is volume 2, which is books 5 to 8. This is a 3-volume set. I have volume 1 somewhere else, and I think it's in one of my drawers over here. Again, this is the Itati Renaissance Library. It's part of their series of Renaissance books. Harvard, of course, runs that. And these books are really well done, well crafted. You get the Latin and the English. And most of the books are written in Latin because they are from the Renaissance, and a lot of Renaissance histories, and even biographies and stuff like that are going to be about that. Nice map here of the time. These volumes are very well done, and they're very, it's hard to really mistreat them. The paper is really nice, has a nice fragrance to it. It's true. It's important. Okay, here's an outstanding novel. An outstanding novel by Machado de Assis called Dom Casmurro. Basically, it's about the life of a young kid who grows up. A young girl catches his eye, and he loves her, and he keeps loving her, and he ends up marrying her. And throughout, he has a best friend, and all of his and his mother, and just a lot of great stuff in it about life. And it's a very, at the ending there's a kind of a sad twist, but it's a very good book, a very good novel. There's great humor in it. There's tragedy. It has everything in it, much like life. And it's incredibly well written. It's a classic. It's set in Brazil. Really great book. Highly recommend it. Dom Casimiro, great book. Okay, here's another excellent volume by a African American writer, Charles W. Chestnut. The House Behind the Cedars, and this is about a white man who falls in love with a light-skinned black woman, and this causes issues, and ultimately it leads to something very terrible happening. And this is an excellent book. It's tragic love story, and the love is in the heart of the woman who is the innocent victim of the white man's gaze and his love. Of course, he ends up marrying another woman and stuff, but really does some terrible stuff because of rumors and stuff. He doesn't want his reputation in any way disparaged because he comes from a wealthy white family. And this is a really nice read. Chestnut is excellent. Great writer. Underrated in my opinion. Next up is a rather madcap book. A little off the train, but still excellent. And it's called Corrigan by Carolyn Blackwood. Very funny novel. And also kind of sad. About familial relations. And in England at the time. And it's a comedy of manners. And a very neat and funny novel. A lot of great snappy dialogue too. A lot of wit. And also behind all that, there's sort of a sadness. And that's all. It's a great volume. Interesting stuff. Here's a collection of poems by a French poet called Jules Laforgue. Selected poems. There's a pointillist painting by it's not by Seurat, it's by Charles Engram. It's in the Musée d'Orsay. Yeah. And his poems are rather, I want to say, they're very emotional. And they're a lot of his poems are titled Complaints. And it's kind of funny because they're not really, they're complaints, but they're basically lamentations and criticisms of certain things. His poetry is beautiful, though. It's a lot of nice imagery, a lot of moon, a lot of landscape. Good stuff. Nice. Next up is a book by Elfriede Jelinek, an Austrian writer. Oh, and she won the Nobel Prize. That did not detract from her glory. This book is as the blurb here says, brilliant and unrelenting and horrifying exploration of post-war Austria. Basically, it tells how a lot of the society is still marred by a lot of the Nazi sympathizers within Austria, and the children of those Nazi sympathizers become, marked by that and do incredibly cruel things and hold incredibly terrible views and treat people terribly. And there's a lot of dark humor in it, and there's a lot of violence and just mistreatment of humans in this, and it's treated in an excellent fashion. I mean, the work is well written. It's an interesting book. I recommend it. Next up, Sadat Hassan Manto, and this is called Kingdoms In, and it's a collection of short stories, and if you like short stories and if you like great tales that move your heart, make you laugh, or just make you feel something or make you think, this is the man for you. This collection is excellent. It is really just too much. There's one story about when they partitioned India and Pakistan, and one guy one day he was standing in India, and the next day he was in Pakistan, and he didn't know where the line was. And it's kind of a sad and funny story. And there's other stories. It's just a beautiful volume of short stories. He really has a talent of writing both just down and out scenery, or slums and stuff like that. And then the next short story will open with a beautiful, wealthy woman standing on a balcony and in the moonlight, and the way her dress glows, and you can see the silhouette of her body underneath it. It's just beautiful. He's really a very poetic writer, despite the fact that it's prose. Good stuff. Sadat Hassan Manto, Kingdoms In and Selected Stories. This volume is really good. It's by Penguin. It's a modern classic. Excellent stuff. Next up, again, I will tell you one of my favorite writers, John Ruskin, and this is Praederita, basically his life. And once again, an interesting man is going to write a very interesting life. And it's just incredible. And it's incomplete, too. It's not a biography. And he talks about his experience with art, with people, places, Rome, going to France and other places, his mom and dad. It's just incredible stuff. Really good book. Really good. Autobiography, okay? One of my favorite authors, very funny guy. An Oxford edition. Hardbound, really good quality hardbound. Tobias Smollett, Sir Lancelot Greaves, and of course when he, hey, I was looking for this postcard. I think that's Gauguin. No, it says when he released this, when he first released this, and people started reading it, critics said, "Oh, this is a copy of Don Quixote." And I say to them, maybe so, but it's a Don Quixote set in a different time with different characters and stuff like that. And it's great. If you're going to copy Don Quixote. It has some plates in it too. It's pretty neat. Really excellent volume, solid. You could throw this around and it's not going to get damaged. Oh, there it is. There's that plate. And his squire, much like Don Quixote had his squire, so did Sir Lancelot Greaves. Good stuff. Nice volume. Next up, one of my favorite ladies in history, George Sand, Lettres d'un Voyageur. And these are letters that she wrote while she was traveling throughout Europe. And they're dated and they're pretty good. Meaning she dates the letters and Sunday and and she writes them to different people. And it's a very good volume to read. Really interesting stuff. Sound is always good. Nice writer of prose. Okay, next up, and I'll tell this story. It's so fatuous to say this. I only got this book because I was dating a girl in college, and she was doing a paper on this book by Stephen Crane, Maggie and a Girl of the Streets, and other tales of New York, but she was focusing on Maggie. And I read it, and it was pretty good. I read it with her. And we also did a Shelley paper together, the Triumph of Life fragment. And I will tell you that there's nothing more romantic and more touching and intimate than doing something together that involves literature, or even if you were writing about a piece of art or something. There's something about it that really brings you together, and it's a really neat experience. I highly recommend it. This book, though, it's pretty good. It's not bad. Maggie's a really good story, and it's a story that needs to be told. Rather dour story, but still good. Much better than The Red Badge of Courage, of course. Pretty serious stuff. That's all I'm going to say about that. Good stuff. Next up is another book by Charles W. Chestnut. And again, The Marrow of Tradition. And this is about the great riots in Wilmington, North Carolina. And it was a massacre. And they basically, here's the blurb: a fictional anatomy of America's harsh portrayal of the promise of racial equality. And a white man, and there's a murder, and a white man cake dances and goes blackface, and he kills somebody, and black people get blamed for it. And they rise up and protest this. And in the middle of it all is this white man is in love with a light-skinned black girl. And there's always a love element with Chestnut, and how love can go wrong, especially when the color line comes into it. And again, a great novel. Charles W. Chestnut is just an outstanding writer. I can't say it enough. It's a shame that he's not as well known, but he is just outstanding. Okay, next up, an excellent travel log by Robert Byron called The Road to Oxiana. And this, of course, began a journey to Persia and Afghanistan via Jerusalem, Damascus, and Baghdad in search of the origins of Islamic architecture. And his studies of architecture are excellent, and he provides history behind his examination of it. And he also talks about, going through the knowledge. There's maps in here and all that. And it's a very excellent and interesting volume of a part of the world that, fortunately, the United States has been bombing into oblivion for the past 3 or 4 decades. But again, it's a really excellent work by a man who wanted to learn from the culture and through their architecture, an Englishman. Excellent, excellent stuff. Next, Italo Calvino, Cosmic Comics. If you like light comedy, you will like this book. It's very briskly written, as you could tell, very comic. There's also a lot of data in it, a lot of scientific stuff interpolated in it in a really interesting way, and some whimsical humor, which I like about Calvino. Good stuff. Slim volume, about 100, I would say, a little over 150 pages. Good stuff. Okay, here's an excellent slim volume. Sleep in the Sun by Adolfo Bioy. I guess that's how Cazares. Spanish writer, I believe. Oh no, Argentinian. Wait, what is this card? Is this card valuable? No, not really. It's an advertisement for a bookshop. Excellent novel. Good stuff. Love story. I bet you won't be just distracted from her duties. The first line I see. Good stuff. Cazares is always going to be good. Nice stuff. Another book by another slim volume with an introduction by Borges. The Invention of Morale. This is his most well-known work, and it's you can't really describe Cazares' writings, and this one comes with illustrations. Super neat stuff. Here. Someone writing, and then hold on. Oh. Lover sleeping in bunk beds, not together. I guess that's the moon radiating. No, maybe it isn't. Who knows? Good stuff. Those are illustrations by himself. This is an excellent book. Highly recommend it. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to give away the gold. Don't want to give away that gold. Next up, book by Peter Carey. I believe he's an Australian writer. Booker, maybe English. Peter Carey, the Booker Prize winner of Oscar and Lucinda, which the book I don't have. We have a great novelist living on this planet with us, and his name is, that's only the LA Times book review. I have yet to read this book. Nothing has driven me to want to read it, but one day I will. See what all the hype's about. I don't even know what it's about, but I will read the blurb. Peter Carey's narrative rushes like a great stream toward a glittery falls, gathering momentum as it rolls. Oh, that's so poetic. And it's 1837, and the guy pawing London, Jack Maggs, an illegal returnee from the prison island of Australia. That's right, folks. It's about an Australian prison camp guy. Englishmen, they used to send their prisoners to Australia. It was a prison camp before it became a NATO terrible nation. Okay, next up, with a price marker still in front of it, is The Reformation of the 16th Century by Roland H. Bainton. And this is a pretty good book. I actually read it, and once again, excellent plates. Merchants meeting in the street, or maybe dealing over something, talking, haggling. Good stuff. Comprehension in a little way of Anglicanism, that kind of stuff. And dealing with, there's Ulrich Zwingli, a great Reformation figure. That was in Switzerland, of course. Look at this stuff. Look at this stuff. They're taking down the Mother Church because it's so rotten and corrupt. Good stuff about the Reformation. Okay, next up is a book by Peter Balakian, The Burning Tigris, The Armenian Genocide and America's Response. Of course, Balakian probably wanted the United States to bomb the shit out of Turkey or something like that. I don't know. He did, though. I read the book. Yes, the Armenians are mistreated in Turkey and in Azerbaijan and other areas. The only places that treat the Armenians correctly are Iran and certain parts of Russia. They're treated like human beings, where other places they're not. And that's about it on this one. Rather emotional read, a little bit over emotional, and wish it had involved more less partisan fever and more information, more data, and more words from the people who are experiencing it. Okay, but it's okay to be a partisan. Okay, Georges Bataille, Erotism, Death and Sensuality. French writer. Some call him a surrealist. He really wasn't. He was really a moralist. This book basically talks about the erotic in religion, in art, in reproduction. Not only, I'm not talking reproduction in whatever, but in reproduction in labor. And it's a very interesting work, an incredibly interesting work. Bataille is an excellent writer. Very, he takes you in areas where you wouldn't generally think of. Even one section is called The Enigma of Incest, which, Sade and the Normal Man, Marquis de Sade, of course, and beauty, our conceptions of it, and sexual plethora and death, because death is always a constant. Good book. Next up, another French writer, Work of Fire by Maurice Blanchot. this is basically a literary, it's a book about examining certain authors and their work and how it goes into myth and philosophy and stuff and what it means to it. He starts off with 2 epigraphs from Hölderlin and Heraclitus, which is Heraclitus or Clytus, however you want to pronounce that. And that's pretty neat. It's a good sign. Reading Kafka, Reflections on Surrealism, The Paradox of Aitre, Mystery in Literature, The Myth of Mallarmé, of course, Stefan Mallarmé, the great poet, Literature and the Right to Death, on Nietzsche's side, Valéry and Faust, Pascal's Hand, Gazes from Beyond the Grave, Adolphe for the Misfortune of True Feelings, the novels of Sartre's, The Sleep of Rimbaud, Baudelaire's Failure. But Baudelaire would embrace that failure and say it's his glory. Baudelaire was a great poet. That's all I want to say. Okay, here's an excellent philosophical book that basically really influenced a lot of American philosophers and phenomenologists too. And it's Matter and Memory by Henri Bergson. And also, some say that this philosophical work is very influential in the work of Marcel Proust. And this is an excellent volume. It really captures, basically the 2 poles of existence, material and memory, or ideation and images and imagery. And a really outstanding philosophical work. I think it was written in the late 19th century. Let me get it. Yeah, the 5th edition was in 1898, and this was written in, I believe, 1918. Let me see when it was first written. Hold on, because it's important to me. And I know this. I'm getting past the introduction here. And that metaphysics must begin by dispersing this artificial obscurity. Yes. Yeah. Good stuff. Bergson. Next up, German writer Ernst Bloch, who lived a rather tragic life. The Spirit of Utopia. And, an everlasting memory of his mother passed away January 2nd, 1921. And basically this is about art and about art and music and painting and writing and how it, and Karl Marx and even the economical theory and how it reaches towards, life reaches out to death and in a sense tries to embrace it and take it into life. And the Spirit of Utopia, and then hence we are. And I am, it starts off with I am, we are, that is enough, now we have to begin. Life has been put in our hands. For itself it became empty already long ago, and pitches senselessly back and forth, but we stand firm, and so we want it to be its initiative, and we want to be its ends. What just was will probably soon be forgotten. Only an empty, awful memory hangs in the air. Who was defended? Foul, wretched profiteers. That's his objective of the work, and then the self-encounter, the encounterment of the self. And it's a really interesting work. It's a great work of philosophy. Great stuff. Spirit of Utopia, or the Spirit of Nowhere. Okay, next up is a book called The Inoperative Community by Jean-Luc Nancy. This is an interesting book about divine places and how certain sections of our community are inoperative, and they're inoperative for a reason, because they're ornamental. And, Shattered Love, Myth Interpreted, The Inoperative Community, the preface, of course, by Peter Connor, by somebody else, come on. But this is a very interesting volume to read. It'll give you a fresh glance on what people call community. And that'll be it for today. And I hope you folks have a wonderful afternoon.